So this is a little bit of a change of pace, I'd say, because we're going to talk about more of the human research that accompanies projects like Cadence. And I'm going to give you a little mini lesson in evaluation for those of you who don't have a background in evaluation. My colleague, Jung, and I are what's known as external evaluators. Many federal agencies and foundations who give out large grants require that there be some sort of independent or external evaluation. So that is a group of people that are not under the supervision of the organization that they're evaluating. So Bill and Chelren and the Blue Waters people don't supervise me. They don't have anything to do with, my job security or how I get paid. So I have an independence and autonomy from them, and they like to have third-party evaluators go in and evaluate the programs, collect their own data, and use that data both to help the program, but to assure the funding agency that things are going well. So that's what's known as an external evaluator. And the kind of evaluation that we're doing for Blue Waters contains both formative and summative evaluation. Formative evaluation is evaluation to help programs get better. So it's usually done in real time. So as a matter of fact, we did focus groups with the fellows and the interns right here at this meeting. And right after we were done with the focus groups, I went to Bill and Chelren and Scott and other decision makers about those programs, and we gave them informal feedback about what was going on in those programs in order to make real-time decisions and continuous improvement of the program. So that's formative evaluation. Summative evaluation is, did the program work? Is it effective? What are the impacts? So that's usually done on mature programs that have been around a while, and it really talks about the value and worth of the program. And in Blue Waters, we do both of those things. We were initially hired to work on the community engagement activities, so like the fellows, the interns, this symposium, ways of interacting with the community. But in the last few years, we've been asked to do more work with user satisfaction and impact and PI satisfaction and impact. We use an evaluation framework that I developed with my colleague Jennifer Green with NSF funding, and it evaluates 5 aspects of the program. One is implementation. Are things happening as planned and on time? And if they're not, why? And what's being done about that? Effectiveness is, are the components of the program working, and how can they be improved? So implementation and effectiveness are both the formative pieces. Impact is, what are the outcomes and the changes that are occurring because of that program? That's a summative judgment. And in programs like Blue Waters, and most large NSF investments, what you're really looking for is long-term impact. So if we would evaluate the fellows program at exit, when fellows are done with the program walking out the door, we would get one measure of that program. But if you follow up over time with the fellows and see how it affected their lives, how it affected their career decisions, how they've used the program, you get a very different opinion. So most of the studies that we do of impact are actually looking at long-term impact. Sustainability is often a very tricky thing to evaluate, because it's great to have a program like Blue Waters. It's great to have this annual symposium and all of the activities and outreach that Blue Waters does. But when Blue Waters goes away, what happens to this community? Who continues to bring this group of people together? And so we try to look at which components of this should be sustained and how can they be sustained. And then a lens that I always use is diversity and inclusion. Does this program work for whom? And to try to see, are diverse people being engaged? And if they're engaged, does the program produce similar impacts for them? I'm going to talk about not all the things we evaluate, just a few of them. The fellowship program, the internship program, symposium, and the user and PI work that we're doing. But what I want you to pay attention to in this slide is that for everything we evaluate, we have multiple data sources. So we don't rely on one measurement or one judgment to evaluate the program. We try to look at things from multiple perspectives. So in the fellows program, we talk to the fellows, we talk to their advisors, we talk to their point of contact. We talk to lots of stakeholders to try to get a judgment of the program. And we also try to use multiple methods. So we try to use both quantitative and qualitative methods because together they provide a little bit richer idea of what's going on in a program. And as I said, we also try to do things over time. So let's start and talk a little bit about the Graduate Fellows Program. And really, in this presentation, I will be presenting a lot of data about Blue Waters, but it's not so important that you really get down in the data because what we're trying to think about is the evaluation here. So this is more about how we use data to make judgments. So last year, we evaluated the Graduate Fellows Program, and we found a number of things. There were 26 fellows at that time. So longitudinally, it wasn't only the 10 in that cohort, but it was everybody before them. We found that the Fellows Program enhanced the fellows' research productivity by using the unique power of Blue Waters. So we looked at the number of publications and the outlets for those publications and the presentations that they did. So general productivity measures. We also talked a lot to the fellows about what did this program do for your career. And the Fellows Program is a year-long fellowship. It's given to people beyond the second year of their graduate program. So it's not an entry-level fellowship. It's once you've been in your graduate program for a while. And it's particularly to build the computational aspects of your research. So the expectation is that it's going to transform your research and really pump up the computational pieces of that. And so we've been talking to the fellows for a long time now. There's been, I think, this is our 4th cohort of fellows, about what that means. And their comments have evolved over time. In the beginning, the fellows were a little uncomfortable that they were interdisciplinary. They were people in all different disciplines. And the first time that they came to a conference like this, they said, you know, it's really weird because there's not enough presentations in my discipline. I don't know what presentations to go to because there's not enough in biology or there's not enough in astrophysics. And over time, they began to see the advantage of being in this cohort with people from lots of disciplines, but the common theme is the computation. And so now it's very common to have fellows say, I want to go to this session because they're using some computational technique that I want to apply to my own discipline, and I want to see how they're using it. So that interdisciplinarity and the value of that interdisciplinarity has really developed, not only in the Fellows Program, but actually in this symposium, which we'll show you some data on that in a minute. And then something that I don't know that we necessarily expected at the start of this program, but it has definitely come through, is the research independence. So like you're a 3rd or 4th or 5th year graduate student, and now you're getting $50,000 to support you for a year, and you're getting access to Blue Waters resources, and you're getting a point of contact in Blue Waters to help you develop your code and get your work to run. And what we hear many fellows say is that gave them independence in their lab to move the work a little bit away from what their advisor would have them do and to explore things that they themselves were really interested in doing. And at first we thought that there might be some problems there with the advisor, but as you see, we have some advisor data that said, you know, this was actually fantastic. I didn't have to find support for this person, and they actually moved my lab in a direction that we didn't have the capacity to move in before. In addition to the idea of developing technical skills and developing confidence as a person who actually uses HPC, the Fellows Program also talked about this experience broadening their career spectrum. So at this conference, they get to meet people from national labs and people from industry and people from NCSA and other computer centers, and they come into contact with people that as a regular graduate student, they might not have very much contact with. And when you look at our follow-up data, you'll see that the fellows are actually quite broad in how they're defining their own career goals and where they're ending up in their careers. So those are our big findings that we came up with the program. So how do we come up with these findings? Well, we give out surveys and we have them rate things, but actually in many of our programs, it's the qualitative data and the comments from the interviews and the focus groups that really give us deep insight into how the programs worked. I'm not going to read all of these, but I will read a couple of them just to give you a flavor for this. So the first one, the project that I tackled for the Blue Waters Fellowship was really something I hadn't proposed in my original PhD program because it was something I couldn't accomplish with the scope of resources I had. So that was absolutely a positive. I just would not have been able to do this work without the Blue Waters Fellowship. So that's transformative. It's taking what would have been their dissertation and making it into something else. The next one shows a little bit of a different impact. We're able to go in a very different direction now because it's almost unprecedented to run the kind of biogeochemical model that we want to run at this resolution. That's going to turn out to provide a data set that other researchers will use. So it's transformative because they're producing a model with more complexity than it's been done before, and it's going to produce a data set that other people can benefit from. And the last one, project that I wouldn't tackle, but if you look at the bullet, it's definitely letting me tackle science questions that I couldn't if I didn't have this fellowship, different types of questions and different scales of questions. So really changing opening people's minds to what's possible. And you'll see some of the quotes from the PIs and the advisors say the same thing. We talk to advisors because they're actually, an important piece of this equation. It's quite rare to have this level of computational knowledge. It's very marketable. It's a rare skill. It's very valuable. The fellowship benefited both from access to the resource, but also with networking with students in other fields. So that's a very sophisticated view by the advisor, that it's not just they got this money to pay them for a year, but they have this network, access to this network that's going to impact them. The computational resources and help provided were excellent. So it's not only the resources, but the fact that they have a point of contact who's supporting them. And the last one, the fellow I advised, it enabled them to accomplish much more that would have been possible. So the productivity, they got a lot done. And fellows estimate that they get between 2 and 3 more publications than they would have without the fellowship. So it enables them to actually do more publication and presentation. So we follow the fellows up over time, and you can see that about 42% of them are still in grad school, so they haven't finished yet. About 26% are in their postdoc program, and another 26% have moved on to faculty or researcher positions. And the researcher positions are mostly in national labs or computer centers. 61% or 62% are still using Blue Waters. Many of them have gone on to get their own allocation. And 66% are still using HPC. I talked to a fellow today who isn't using HPC anymore, and I said, is that a bad thing? I'm going to present this at dinner, and are people going to say, why aren't they? And he said, well, no, actually, at that phase in my work, the advanced computational resources were really important. It was great that I developed those skills, but I'm actually in a different place right now, and I don't have as much need for computation. Doesn't mean I won't return to it. Doesn't mean I won't tap those skills when I write a grant or work with students. But in this point in my career, it's right for me to not be using HPC. And I really like this quote because I think it talks about sort of some of the deep impact. The Blue Water Fellowship was very important to my current and future professional endeavors. The fellowship allowed me freedom and opportunity to propose and conduct my own research projects. Establishing this confidence and experience helped me obtain my faculty position without a postdoc. And several of the other fellows have told us that they felt like when they were interviewing for positions, this gave them an edge that they had this fellowship. Moreover, the connections with NCSA staff and other Blue Waters fellows have been useful and will continue to be useful going forward. In particular, the opportunity to collaborate with NCSA and other fellows to help our careers advance. Currently, another Blue Water fellow and myself are brainstorming a joint cross-discipline NSF proposal coupling our work. We plan to write and submit once they complete their PhD and are either a postdoc or junior faculty. So I think that's another unexpected thing that we've seen with the fellowships is actually the connections within and across cohorts are quite strong, and they rely on each other for a lot of things. They see NCSA as a research source, but they also see each other as a resource, and we'll continue to follow them to see how that maps out. I evaluate a lot of large research centers, some of which are much older than Blue Waters, and we do a social network analysis to sort of see where graduates from that center have gone, and something like that with Blue Waters I think would be very useful. So what did we learn about the Fellows Program? Well, it's not only about the speed and size of computing, but it's also the nature of the questions asked, the interdisciplinarity, and the PI's lab also benefit from having this fellowship. It's important to connect fellows to resources beyond Blue Waters. So it's great that they know Blue Waters, but when they get out into the world, it's going to be important for them to know other things too. And so one of the things that we've advised the point of contact to do is to connect them with resources, either their own local resources at their campus or other national resources. The face-to-face contacts, initially there were not a lot of face-to-face contacts in this program, and they've actually increased over time. So originally the only time there was a face-to-face contact was the fellows came to this meeting one time. And we found out that the point of contact did not work very well in the beginning because there wasn't really a relationship between the fellow and the point of contact. The point of contact didn't really know what they were supposed to do. The fellow didn't know how to access them. And so we built more contact between them, and now the point of contact is a strong part of the program. We also felt for the cohort building and the community building piece, more face-to-face was necessary. And so now they come to this when they get chosen, when they're ending their fellowship, and they also go to NCSA and meet all the Blue Water staff and visit the facility. And that seems to be a good amount of contact. Points of contact are critical partners. It's taken a while to develop that program, but it's very successful now. And one interesting thing, as fellows move to the workforce, they want a point of contact. Two of the fellows that are now faculty said that they chose their institution because there was a point of contact kind of service available to them. There was somebody to help them with their code and with computer access. And so I think we're creating a little bit different kind of faculty who has those expectations for that kind of support. Always diversity is an issue. The Fellows Program has been very effective at recruiting women. It has not been effective at recruiting other underrepresented groups. So attention to diversity and personal recruiting is always, always key, and it's something that you have to be vigilant. When we look at the interns, you'll see that, slacking off for a year and not being aggressive about recruiting can really lower your diversity numbers for those programs. Okay, so that's the Fellows Program. Now let's talk a little bit about the Internship Program. The Internship Program is for undergraduates, and they begin with a 2-week Petascale Institute, and then they have a full year of research with a mentor back on their own campus. I guess it can be at some other campus too, but the research should be computational in nature. Oh, I should say one thing. You hear that I'm saying that there's been a lot of changes in these programs related to the evaluation information. And I remember with the Fellows Program, the first year that we evaluated the Fellows Program, there were some good things about it, but there were also some things that clearly were not working well. And Christina Beldica was the head of that program at that time, and we sat down with her and went over the evaluation data, and she said, yeah, we got to change some things. We have to change how points of contact are selected. We have to bring them to NCSA. We have to do these other things. So the programs won't get better by themselves, and they won't get better just because you do evaluation. They get better because you pay attention to the evaluation and you enact what the evaluation information tells you. And the last time that we had a site visit for Blue Waters, I presented some of these data, and the site visit team was like, these data are too positive. Like, no program is this good. You're cherry picking these data. And what I had to show them was actually the data in the beginning were not this good. But with iteration and improvement, you can get a good program up to a high quality program. But you have to be willing to act on the data. And so I just want to give a call out to Christina and all the Blue Water staff who are very, very willing to talk about evaluation. So the internship program, they do this hands-on experience, and really the goal here is to maybe get people who haven't had a lot of opportunity to do HPC, or who are maybe in computer science but not really sure what they want to do, and to give them an authentic research experience and some HPC exposure. So we have been evaluating it for a number of years, and what we found is that it is very effective. Fellows tend to take more HPC-related classes and have more HPC-related experiences after they do the fellowship. The Petascale Institute is great for just giving them a 2-week immersion in HPC, and they think that they know everything about HPC at the end of the 2 weeks, but actually what it really does is boost their confidence to be able to go and learn more about HPC. And as you look at our follow-up data, you'll see that the vast majority of interns, once they go through this program, stay in some computer science field. They either go immediately to work in some CS-related field, or they continue to graduate education in that field. So here we have some more quotes. It provided me with a strong background in HPC. It introduced me to an area of research that I had little knowledge about. It's the most meaningful project that I had the opportunity to carry out in my undergraduate program, considering my background from a small liberal arts college. So that might be another case for students who don't have this experience in their undergrad, and then they're able to get it through the internship program. The Petascale Institute, we evaluate with a survey, and it's 15 people. This is from last year, but the 2018 one just ended on Friday. So there were 15 students in that cohort, and you can see, this is ratings on a scale of 1 to 5. You can see that they were extremely high ratings. And you know, it's hard to get ratings this high on a 2-week institute. In a 1-hour session and a 1-day session, you can get high ratings. When people have to come back for 15 days in a row, it's hard to make everybody happy. So these are really outstanding ratings. But again, if you look at them from 2014 until now, they were not this good. So there's been a lot of iteration to really understand how to make this better. The other thing that's happened with the internship program is it just used to be a summer program. So they came to the Petascale Institute for 2 weeks, and then they did research in the summer, and then they just went back to their lives. And what we found was that that summer experience was really not enough to flip a switch and get them moving in another direction. So we expanded it to a full-year academic program, which is a pretty profound change, but from the data, it was decided that they needed more than just a 3-month program. This is some diversity data, and you can see, so the orange bar is students from minority-serving institutions or EPSCoR institutions, and the blue bar is female. So that you can see that in 2014, 40% from each of those, pretty diverse, that's great. You can see that in 2015, the female participation really slipped. And so you constantly have to be vigilant in your recruitment to make sure that you have a diverse enough applicant pool that you can get a diverse participant pool. 2016, EPSCoR up to 42, a little bit better for women, and then 2017 was half from EPSCoR or MSIs and 33% women. So this is always a metric that we report, and one that's it just doesn't happen by itself. There has to be real action to get diversity to happen. Broader impact, you can see that of the 27 students who are out and answered our survey, about half of them are working professionals, software engineer, researcher, software consultant. So they've stayed in the field, they were able to get jobs. 22% are master's students in computer science or applied physical science. 22% have moved on to a doctoral degree, again, in computationally related fields, and a few of them are still in their undergraduate program. And we'll continue to track these students over time. In fact, you heard from one of the students, Colleen, on Tuesday, and talked about her experience coming in from Bradley University into the internship program, and now she's in a PhD program at University of Illinois. So what do we learn? There is evidence that it helps students pursue future studies and careers. The Petascale Institute's really important. Without it, it probably would not be a successful program. That having contact throughout the academic year really helps. Having local mentoring, so at their home campus, and central mentoring makes a difference. It used to only be central mentoring, and that wasn't really enough to get them over the hump. People could kind of go rogue or not check in for a while and not get their work done, so having somebody on campus and somebody centrally is important. It seems to have the most impact for non-CS majors to get them to think about taking more CS courses, or students at primarily undergraduate teaching institutions that don't have much access to computing. And direct program is, recruitment is necessary for diversity. Symposium, we're all here at the symposium. Hopefully everyone has filled out their evaluation because we use them a lot. Last year, there was very high satisfaction, 4.74 on a scale of 5, and the standard deviation is pretty small, 0.48, so a lot of agreement there. 4.51 for achieving goals, again, a pretty small standard deviation, so most people felt good about it. Diversity of topics was rated as the most attractive feature of the symposium, and this is 180 degrees from the first symposium, where again, people said, I don't understand this. Like, where is my discipline? I want to go to things that are in my discipline. I don't want to go to all these other things. And so the community has changed to really begin to understand the importance of interdisciplinary gatherings around computation. And opportunities for interaction were strengths of the symposium. Another thing that we hear about this symposium is that the opportunity to engage with Blue Water staff is really important and might be kind of unique, that they are able to see face-to-face these people that they email with or that they know are answering their help tickets or whatever, that they're able to spend 3 days with them in some remote place, and they don't get to do that very often. I don't really want you to read the words here, but I want you to look at the colors. So this is satisfaction with the symposium along lots of dimensions. It's again on a 5-point scale. Blue is strongly agree, so those are the people that are most positive. Yellow is agree, gray is neutral, and orange or lighter blue are the cranky people, the people that did not have a good time. And you can see that overwhelmingly along most of these dimensions, you don't have to know anything else, but this has generally been a positive experience for most people. And given the composition of this group, faculty and graduate students, postdocs, academic researchers, getting this level of satisfaction is actually quite difficult. So the symposium has evolved over years, and again, in the beginning, this is not what the numbers look like, but over time, it's become a much more positive experience. When we asked them, what do you like the best? Collaboration and interaction, engaging with Blue Water staff are the most valued aspects. We asked what's the most useful event from the past year. Annual symposium comes up as the top event in Blue Waters. The webinar series is second, but there's a big distance between the two. So if you're justifying to NSF, why do we have to spend all this money for the symposium? The fact that the community values it a lot is a good justification. I missed a slide. Oh, where is it? Oh, I must have deleted it. Sorry. So symposium lessons learned. The value of interdisciplinary content increased greatly since 2014. So in 2014, when we asked, like, do you like the interdisciplinary? The mean was 3.34. I usually say anything above a 3.5 is pretty good. This wasn't at a 3.5. People didn't think it was a good idea. This year it's 4.74. So lots of change in people's regard for that. Diverse topics are seen as a strength rather than a weakness. The annual symposium is giving credit for creating a community of Blue Waters, that people now know each other, that the people that use this resource. And as I said, Blue Water staff are really important. User survey is something that we started last year. Many of you have probably filled it out. We got a survey response rate of 25.3%. Actually, for these kinds of online surveys, that's not a bad percentage, but what's more important than the percentage response rate is it a profile of people who use Blue Waters? And we got a pretty good cross-section of graduate students, PIs, researchers, people who had prac accounts, people who had education accounts, and so on. And we assessed user satisfaction along a number of dimensions. Again, scale from 1 to 5. Anything above a 3 is positive. I tell centers if you're above a 3.5, you're doing okay. You can see along all dimensions, Blue Waters is pretty positive. Some of the dimensions, like scientific or technical support services by Blue Water staff, is actually over 4.5. But what I really want you to get from this slide is we compare 2017 to 2018. So doing this survey once is really good. Doing it over time allows you to look at trends and to see, is satisfaction going backwards, is satisfaction increasing? And in a long-term funded project like this one, it is not unusual for satisfaction to wane. People are happy in the beginning, and then after 2 or 3 years, they're like, oh, isn't there more than this? So you can't always count that satisfaction is going to be continuing to increase. But as you see, just in a 1-year difference, we see an increase. The green is 2018, the purple is 2017, and along most dimensions, there is an increase. So that's a positive trend. We also asked them about impact. So 99.3% of the people who answered the survey said Blue Waters is essential, very important to their research, so 151 people said that. They gave lots of technical reasons why it was important, but there's a quote that I singled out that I think goes beyond the technical. My project has been the seed for several completely novel research directions. What may be unconventional in the impact Blue Waters has had was providing direct contact with like-minded, computing-oriented experts in otherwise disparate fields that have spawned new ideas and research directions. This would not have been possible without the supportive, diverse community of researchers and staff that complies Blue Waters. So this was a respondent who said it's not only the technical stuff or the power of the machine, but the community is really important to me. And then in 2016, we were asked to interview PIs, no easy task there. And I think there were around 90 PIs at that time, and we were able to get interviews with 37 of them. Maybe some of them are in this room, and we wanted to ask them about their satisfaction with Blue Waters, how it impacted their research, and any suggestions they had for improvement. And they were very positive, got lots of good comments. One of the respondents described Blue Waters as a revolutionary concept in user-focused design and support. But I was very interested to hear the PIs, many of whom were very senior, talk about why Blue Waters was important to them. So one of the things that was, and again, I evaluate lots of cyber infrastructure projects. One of the things that I had actually never heard before was they said that Blue Waters is successful because of its intensive work with multiple user groups in the early stages of development and continued attention to user needs and feedback. And you can see the first quote, "In my two-decade academic career, I've never experienced such attention to the user community." And you see the second quote, "In the early days, there was some concern about how long things were taking and whether Blue Waters would really fill a unique role or void in supercomputing infrastructure. Now I would say there's no doubt that Blue Waters has achieved the original vision and perhaps surpassed it." So you can see how these data are quite different from a 4.57, right? They both tell you something about the project, but they tell you different things. And looking at them together is very valuable. More things, lots of people said it accelerated their research. It was necessary to their research. Blue Waters is literally the only place where our group can run any type of large simulation. We can finally routinely use large data sets large enough to accurately simulate phenomena with fidelity. And these kind of data and quotes are really important when you're working with site reviews or panels, because they convey the impact and the importance of this resource to people who may not really understand what the value of something like Blue Waters is. There were lots of things that they said Blue Waters allowed them to do, but we also had some quotes like, "I would say that Blue Waters has changed the way we approach scientific problems in my group. My current students propose bigger, bolder, more complex projects than the last generation before Blue Waters. It has definitely changed our view of what is reasonable." They also liked the education and outreach things. And here we get into issues of sustainability. Graduate students and postdocs who have experienced Blue Waters are going to want to have continued access to that level of computing. We have to develop a way to scale the community and its resources. The Fellows Program is one of the best opportunities. We could use many more of these, perhaps by discipline. So you can see the idea of, well, how do we continue? Okay, it's ending in March, but how do we continue it after that? And then the annual symposium, I actually love these quotes. At first I was not sure we needed another meeting, especially for a service provider, but now I see it's a mechanism for advancing. Can't you just see some kind of crusty professor saying these things? But now I see it's a mechanism for advancing supercomputing and for building a professional community, a different approach, but very valuable. So what did we learn from the PI interviews? Well, that the efforts to obtain stakeholder input, even though they took a long time and were probably annoying sometimes, actually resulted in a better product. And the personal connections are really important. Over and over again, people talked about knowing who the staff were and knowing who to contact. We have evidence that Blue Waters has changed the way computational research is done in significant ways. Interdisciplinary computation is becoming more commonly accepted and valued in the community, and that there is recognition that these types of education and outreach experiences are producing a new type of student. So what do we learn from evaluation? Well, I think that formative evaluation, so that's the kind that you're helping people to do better, leads to refinement of programs to a very high quality. You can do programs 5 years in a row, or you can study them and make them better every year and end on a very high level. The longitudinal tracking, even though it takes a lot of time and resources, it's very expensive, gives you better data about longer term impact. You can have people fill an exit survey when they walk out the door, but knowing what they're doing 2 years later with what they gained from that experience is probably more important information. The quantitative-qualitative multi-method approach provides a very rich picture. So if you get a 4.57 on an activity, you can say, okay, it was pretty good, but you don't know why it was good, you don't know much more about it. So there's that temperature taking, that little litmus test, but then deeper understanding of what's going on. External evaluation permits objectivity and a critical friend approach. Like today, I had to deliver some bad news about something that wasn't working well. And I feel like I can do that because I have a little bit of objectivity. I'm kind of one step removed, and I can go in a very unemotional way and say something's not going well. And likewise, people can tell me something's not going well because I can guarantee that I won't release their name, and I'll try to minimize the consequences to them. So it's a little bit of a conduit to share information that reduces the risk on both sides. And then human data complements the other commonly used HPC metrics. So we can, look at downtime, and we can look at, jobs run, and we can look at lots of other things. But the human data provides a little bit of a different perspective on what an effective center like Blue Waters is. So thank you very much for staying with me tonight. Are there any questions or comments that people have? Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Ryan.
Thank you. So when you're doing this kind of qualitative research, how do you design focus groups and surveys so that you don't sort of get the answers that you want, or get the answers that the people that are asking you to do it want?
Well, there is a skill to designing those questions. I think the biggest thing is to answer. I trained as a psychologist, and so there you use questions as projective. So the first question is super open. Like, what was this experience like for you? And so I think you leave questions open, and you allow the respondents to kind of guide you wherever they want to guide you. You also, I think it's helpful to have review. Like, we do everything as a team. So I might design something that looks objective and looks like it's going to be good, and somebody on my team will say, you're not really doing it. So I think there's some technique to it, but also having other eyes look at it is really important. And for people that have done focus groups, we've done many, do you feel like you're being guided in those focus groups? Do you feel like you're able to respond the way you want, or do you feel like you're being influenced in some way? You can speak out. Yeah, what do you think? Did you feel guided, or did you feel like you could speak around? Yeah. And the other thing is the externality. It's a closed room. We don't dwell on names. I never take a name out of that room. I don't even try to learn people's names a lot of times because it's just easier that way. And so I think that people feel like they can also be very honest and open. Any other questions, comments? Yeah.
Yep, couple.
You've been evaluated many times.
Hi, Lizanne. Always great to listen to you. So my question is, after doing these qualitative survey and evaluation and so on, have you compared some of these survey and evaluation results with some quantitative measurements from the machine, such as the wait time and some of these more mechanically measurable results and how they might correlate?
I have not done it at Blue Waters, but for Exceed, we do some of those things. We look at the human measures and the machine measures together and see if we can see any patterns. Yeah, we do that.